Hey everyone, and welcome to Earnings Cheat Sheet for Friday, May 17th. It's Alexis, Garcia, and Ed Carson here, and we'll be taking a look at some key upcoming earnings reports to help you prepare for the week ahead. And Ed, I have a sense we have a big earnings report due next week. Is that correct?
Yeah, we're going to talk about Toll Brothers. Oh, is that it? No, that is a big one. But as we're going to talk about Toll Brothers, China e-commerce giant PD Holdings, but Nvidia, the most important stock in the market, that'll be reporting next week, and with everybody paying attention to that one.
Well, I had a feeling I am an empath, but let's start with Nvidia. The chip maker and AI leader is scheduled to report its Q1 earnings on Wednesday, May 22nd. And let's go to that cheat sheet. Earnings are expected to surge 412% to 558 per share, and revenue is expected to climb 245% to 24.51 billion. And here's why we're watching Nvidia. With all the artificial intelligence buzz, can the tech giant make enough AI chips to satisfy demand? And Nvidia stock is also consolidating ahead of earnings. So, Ed, this report will be a big status check on the AI revolution and could really move the market next week.
Yeah, I mean, this has been an AI-led market really since the beginning of 2023. Nvidia is the leader in that. It is gigantic by its own measure, but it's so important when you consider Broadcom, and all sorts of other chip makers, Supermicro, these server makers, Microsoft, ServiceNow, and it just goes on and on. How that'll be. The earnings are going to be tremendous. Okay, the only question is, are they going to be good enough? I mean, they're going to be gigantic again. The guidance presumably will be strong. The question is, it going to be strong enough? That could be an issue. That's just something to keep in mind. But it's definitely going to be great. So I think one of the questions is yes. So earnings and the guidance paramount, but then as you talked about, there is the issue: can they make enough? Taiwan Semiconductor makes the chips for Nvidia. Can does that have enough room? Because I'm sure Taiwan Semi wants to make as many as possible, but there may be limits. So that's the only real questions. But yeah, all eyes, all ears on Nvidia Wednesday night.
All right, well, let's take a closer look at the chart then. And I'm on the daily here. And, NVIDIA nearing record highs ahead of earnings. It's in consolidation with an official buy point of 974. But it looks like it might have rose above an early entry this week with all the news from the Google I/O conference.
Yeah, that was an official buy point. Actually, that handle doesn't show up on Market Surge in this case because it's a normal odd consolidation, but that's a real buy point. It broke out there, and it actually sort of moved out when it retook the 50-day line for the second time on May 3rd, just before forming that handle. That was a big day for the market. What Nvidia did and the whole market, that sort of set the stage. So it's in a buy zone right here. We'll see. The only issue is that earnings are coming up, and the stock could have a tremendous gain or a tremendous loss. Yes, there's been some real big gains, but those expectations are pretty high heading into the report. So that's just a risk. You could do an earnings options play, and obviously, if you have a big gain in this, that's a totally different question. But something for new buyers to consider heading into earnings.
All right. Well, let's take a look then at PDD. PDD's operations include the China-focused e-commerce platform Pinduoduo, along with international discount retail platform Temu. The company reports its Q1 results also on Wednesday, May 22nd, and earnings are estimated to rise 46% to 143 per share, and revenue is expected to climb 95% to 10.41 billion. And here's why we're watching PDD. We'll want to see where the company expects future Temu growth to come from. And we'll also want to hear about any possible regulatory risks Temu may be facing here in the US. What's on your radar with PDD?
Well, PDD is growing faster than some of its China rivals in large part because of Temu, because it's like, as China's a tough market, there's been a lot of competition there, so you can go vastly outside. I mean, obviously there's a lot of competitors overseas, but PDD has a lot of. That's one reason why its growth has been so tremendous. This one, it's performed. Stock has performed much better, but PDD still a big player in China. A lot of overseas growth. They compete with Amazon in the U.S. They compete with like Sea Limited in Southeast Asia, among many others. So what they have to say is really good. They're in many ways the global e-commerce giant because almost nobody competes in all the regions where they do. Uh, Temu does seem to be slowing the growth a little bit in the U.S. That's after a huge burst, like a year or two ago. And there are regulatory issues. Like there's some weird regulatory exceptions that allow a lot of make it very cheap to ship to the U.S. and that could become under attack. And there's also just some concerns about uh, Timu and just some U.S. China tensions in that regard could affect that. But it's been doing very well.
All right, well, let's take a look on the chart then. And again, this one broke out this week. We had a 142.32 buy point with a cup with handle base. So what are your thoughts here on this chart?
Again, like Nvidia, boy, if it weren't for earnings, this would be looking, really interesting here. Yeah, this handle works as to this base, or if you put it in that broader consolidation going back a few months, that handle would still work. I mean, it's sort of an ugly, odd-looking thing that was going on. This is held up again with a lot of other rivals faded off. The AD rating is a B plus. You can see a lot of these blue volume spikes, especially when it's moved up on the right-hand side, because this stock had, after its last earnings report, looked like it was going to take off. It was breaking out and then gave up all those gains and then turned lower. It was ugly. I mean, let's be clear, it was an ugly stock reaction ultimately, but it found support at the 200-day line and since then has come up. Some of its U.S. and like rivals. I mean, Amazon had a good report. JD had a good report. Alibaba had a decent report. Sea Limited had a good report. So all of its rivals are doing pretty well. That's probably one reason why it's doing well. But so it has a real chance to show, see if that performance can continue here.
All right, well, let's go to the next name on our list, which is Toll Brothers, which reports earnings on Wednesday, May 22nd. The home builder is expected to see Q2 earnings rise 45% to $4.14 per share, and analysts expect revenue to climb 3% to $2.58 billion. And here's what we're watching with Toll Brothers. Housing stocks are performing really well despite high mortgage rates. We'll also be looking out for any comments on the housing market and demand outlook. And Toll stock also trading in a buy zone ahead of earnings. So, Ed, we've seen these housing stocks be resilient even with all the noise around Fed rates and interest rates. So, what are your thoughts here as Toll heads into earnings?
Yeah, they seem to do all right. They've been doing pretty well, even when the mortgage rates were rising. Sort of like they were walking uphill, and then once it goes down, it really rates had trended lower in the last couple of weeks. And that they really seem to take off in that situation. Toll Brothers sort of stood out. Now it's a luxury builder. Now being out in California, it doesn't seem like luxury because these are like $1 million homes. It's like, what? That almost seems like a starter home out here in LA. But those are sort of in that luxury space. But this is a company that didn't really have, it only had 1 quarter of down earnings. There was a lot of expectations that earnings would really struggle last year because of the high mortgage rates, but it held up relatively well. And so that seems to be continuing as that transition. Are you going to see another, how much strength can it continue for there? I mean, there are lumber issues, labor issues that are out there, and just about how much demand there is. But yeah, this is provides another little check on the housing market from a home builder's perspective, when a lot of these home builders are now in buy range.
All right, well, let's take a look at the chart. And as we mentioned, this one broke out in that buy zone ahead of earnings. But Ed, how do you handle something like this that's potentially actionable, but you've got earnings next week?
Well, in this particular case, you might be thinking, maybe I could find a home builder that's in a buy zone that isn't having earnings next week. Toll Brothers will have an impact, but it's less of an issue. So that would be something in this particular case. Yeah, it's tough. Look, if you've owned this since the last breakout or longer than that, you can hold this, if you want. I mean, that's you have a big gain. But yeah, for new buys, it's just difficult to say. I mean, especially there's enough things that could happen with interest rates and other things and the earnings coming out. But relative strength line is basically at highs. It has just strong fundamentals, strong technicals. It's just it's a quality name. I mean, you can do an earnings options play that and hope, just know hedge your risk. You know what your risk is heading into earnings, or you just wait to see how they are and see if you can buy it within the buy zone or even with a gap up afterward.
All right, Ed. Well, we took a look at a few of the big names reporting next week, but Let's take a look at some other names that are also coming up, starting with Decker Outdoors. They post their Q4 earnings on Thursday, May 23rd. So, Ed, again, this one looks like forming a base here ahead of earnings.
Yeah, this was a really big, strong performer. The leader in this group, though it just took a little breather, probably was actionable earlier this week if it weren't for the fact that earnings are coming up. That would be the one issue. So ideally, it would pause and form a handle and then break out on that. I mean, some other shoe names are doing well, but this has been the leader. So definitely, could provide an opportunity at the end of next week.
All right, well, let's hop on over to Modine Manufacturing. They are a thermal management company, and they are going to report earnings also on Wednesday, May 22nd. So tell us about this chart, Ed.
Yeah, I mean, something could look much more dull than AC and heating products. Well, there are more dull things than that, but these are AI plays now because those data centers are so hot that they need cooling systems. And so this has been one of the stronger stocks in the market. So here it is hovering around a buy point. A number of its rivals are doing so, have shown similar action. So definitely one to watch. There's ways to play AI that have nothing to do with AI directly.
All right, well, let's go from thermal cooling units to cosmetics with Elf Beauty. That company posts their Q4 earnings on Wednesday, May 22nd as well. And this one, not looking so good recently, but what are your thoughts here?
Yeah, this one is the run finally over? Because this one had a huge run in, for like what in 2022, 2023, really big moves. Man, on another run now it wouldn't take much for a strong report for this to get above the 50-day line, start looking interesting again. But because it keeps on beating views by a ton and crushing estimates as well. I mean, crushing, raising guidance by a lot as well. Maybe they'll do that again, but our expectations high. That's just something to watch. See if that can go another run.
All right, well, finally, let's take a look at Synopsys. The chip designer will release their earnings on Wednesday, May 22nd. And again, another one forming a base here, Ed.
Yeah, this is one that's been on our long-term leader list. Sort of like this chip design software. It's been a steady grower for a long time. It's struggled a little bit. There was an acquisition in there as well. This one's trying to bounce back, so maybe this will present an opportunity next week. This is buying a long-term leader near the 50-day line is often a good place to do so, and it could be a position trade as well if it forms a handle. So this one is often quietly a stock. Oh, that's not that exciting, but it's like you look at the end of the year, look over the past few years and go, wow, that was one of the very best stocks in the market, and that's the way it's been for quite a while.
All right, Ed. Well, that wraps it for this edition of Earnings Cheat Sheet. And if you want more market analysis, be sure to tune in to Stock Market Today with Alyssa Coram. That goes live after the closing bell. And be sure to follow us on X, Twitter, whatever you call it, at IBD Investors. We'll be posting a curated calendar of all the notable earnings reports on our radar over the weekend to help you prepare. Thanks so much for watching, and we'll see you again next week.